says to teach us an important lesson. Just like Pora Aduma is mechaper, forgives, so too the death of a tzaddik is mechaper, forgives. What does that mean? It means that when a tzaddik dies, people are affected. And people begin to evaluate their lives, and people go to the funeral, and they hear how great the tzaddik is, and they feel bad. Maybe they could be such a big tzaddik. It creates a concept of teshuvah. Just that the tzaddik doesn't die, and Hashem says, okay, I'm going to take away all your averos. There's no free pass. There has to be something you do. So the Gemara says, just like Miriam died, next to Parah Aduma, the Parah Aduma is mechaper, the death of a tzaddik is mechaper. Okay. But we've heard this 2 or 3 times. I don't know if that's mine or yours. We've heard this 2 or 3 times. Let me give you an example. It says, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe, Acharei Moshe, Shnei b'nei Aaron. The Parasha is Acharei Moshe. And what comes right after that? Yom Kippur, the laws of Yom Kippur. So what do Chazal say? Why is the death of Aaron's children, Nadav and Avihu, connected to Yom Kippur? Just like Yom Kippur is mechaper, so the death of a tzaddik is mechaper. So I already learned that in Parshat Acharei Moshe. Why do I need it again here? Kukan. So one answer they give is a nice answer. I might have thought it's only the death of a tzaddik who's a man. Because a man has 613 mitzvot. But a woman, her death is not mechaper because, they have less mitzvot. So we learn from Miriam that's not the case. So it's a nice answer. We need both. But the Gemara says there's a third case we have it. By Aharon. When Aaron died, before he died, he took off his clothes and he gave it to his son, to Eliezer. So the Gemara says, just like the clothes of the Kohen are mechaper, every one of the clothes of the Kohen Gadol was mechaper, this for Lashon Hara, this for different things. So too, the death of Aaron was mechaper, because when the tzaddik dies, his sins are forgiven. So now we have 3 times the same message. So why do we need the message 3 times? So the Netziv says something very interesting. He says, look at the 3 examples. Look at the 3 examples. The first example involves clothing. It tells you that if you want kapara, be careful how you dress. If you dress in a tzniistic fashion, you'll act a certain way. If you're not in a tznius fashion, you'll act a different way. I mean, it's very hard to wear a suit and rob a bank. Usually if you're a gangster or you do things, you're wearing different clothing. When you dress a certain way, it's very hard to rob a bank when you have tzitzit hanging down, or you're wearing tefillin. It's very hard. So the Netziv says the first thing it tells you is clothing. Be careful about clothing. The second thing is by the Bnei Aaron, one of the reasons that they're given that they died is they weren't married. So he says, if you want to be a tzaddik, be careful on your married life. Because very often people who are married scream and yell and fight, and with their wives and their children. He says, family, be very careful with your family. If you want kapara, treat your wife and children in a good way. You'll get kapara. That's the number 2. And the third thing with Miriam was lashon hara. Miriam's whole thing was the way she spoke about her brother. So if you want kapara, just be careful how you speak. So the Netziv says the Torah is teaching us 3 very important areas to focus our attention. Be very careful how you treat family. Be very careful how you talk about others, and be very careful, right? In the third area of not only lashon hara and clothes, but of tzniut, how you dress and how you act. So family, speech, clothing. So I found that to be very, very interesting. Rav Simcha Sheps is one of the Rosh Hashivas of Torah Das. He says that when we daven for rain on Sukkot, we say in the tefillah, Al Haselahach Ashkenaz, the only thing Sephardim say this, Al Haselahach, Moshe hit the rock and water came out. Hashem, please give us water. So everybody says, which event were they talking about? The first time Moshe hit the rock or the second time?
Second time.
So everybody says it must be the first time, because you wouldn't daven, just like Moshe hit the rock, please answer us if he did an Aveirah, right? If it was a sin. Not a good thing to do. But the problem is that the word Selah is only used in the second case. The first time when he hit the rock, he uses the word tzur. Tzur means rock. Tzur means rock in Hebrew. You know, tzur yelav chateshi. Tzur is a rock.
Skala.
Right? So, if we're talking about the second time, why do we daven to Hashem? Remember how Moshe hit the rock when it was such a bad thing. So Simcha Shef says something very interesting. A very nice answer. He says, why was Hashem angry at Moshe when he hit the rock instead of speaking to it? What was the sin? Why was he so angry?
Twice.
What? Twice he hit it. Yeah. Why? Why was Hashem angry? Hashem wanted to teach the Jews a lesson. Just like the rock listens when you only talk to it. So Jews, you should listen to Hashem when I talk to you. Why do I have to punish you? Moshe understood that. Moshe says, if I do it and the rock listens and the Jews don't listen in the future, Hashem's going to say, you know, you're worse than a rock. So this way, Moshe said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to hit the rock. I want to get the Jewish people not to look bad in Hashem's eyes. So Moshe sacrificed himself. If he sacrificed himself, that's why we mention it. Now, it says over here that they were traveling in the desert, and it says, Vatikotzer nefesh ha'om baderech. The people, they were disgusted by the long journey. That means they were exhausted, they were tired, they were frustrated. Okay, understand what's happening. They've been traveling in the desert for 40 years. Enough. We want to go into Israel. Enough already. That's what it means, vatikotzer, short. Their temper, their patience were short because they were tired being in the desert. So there was a philosophy professor. He went into a classroom with a glass, a small glass that was half filled with water. And he asked his class, how heavy is this glass of water? So someone said 2 ounces, 3 ounces, you know, how heavy? Take a phone. How heavy is this phone? 2 ounces, 3 ounces?
2, 3 ounces.
2 or 3 ounces.
Okay.
So you know what he said? He says it's irrelevant. It doesn't make a difference how heavy the phone is. You know what makes a difference? How long you're holding it.
You feel the...
He says you can
If
hold it for
if
5
you hold
minutes,
1
it's no
hour,
problem.
it is not possible.
But after an hour, it's going to be very heavy.
10 pounds.
And after 10 hours,
Yeah.
you're going to want to put it down.
Yeah.
This is what he said. He gave a very interesting answer. He says, the longer you hold the cup, the heavier it becomes. He says, what do you learn from this? He says, problems are like a cup of water. The longer you hold the problems on your shoulders, the heavier the problems come. The heavier life. You have to learn in life to take your problems at some point
Get away.
and just get rid of them. Just put them down.
Solve it.
Solve it. See, that's my philosophy. That's why when I told you earlier, when I started talking, my philosophy is you have a problem, solve it. The solution is not, I give it to somebody else. You know, you don't do it, let him do it. So he's the goy. That's not the solution. Transfer. Usually we try to solve it. Not every problem can be solved, but usually the problem is we try to solve it. But that's what you want to do. You have to solve the problem. Rabbi Wein says something interesting. He says, understand what happened here. Miriam died. Okay, when Miriam died, the well went away. Why? So the Gemara says why. The Gemara says when Miriam died, nobody cried. No one missed her. Now, she was one of the 3 main pillars of the Jewish people, Miriam. And she dies, and nobody comes to the funeral. Not that there were that many funerals. There were not that many people who died in the desert. Nobody.
Why she's 40 years?
She was 40 years in the desert.
Feeding with the water.
And, so what happened was, Miriam died and no one noticed. So Hashem says, okay, you don't appreciate Miriam.
What she did.
Bishut Miriam, you had water.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the water disappears.
Yeah.
Within a day, what happens? Everybody starts crying. We want water, we need water. So Hashem says, oh, now you miss Miriam.
Now you wake up.
Now you wake up.
Now you remember.
Now you realize what you had.
And
And he says that this is what a lesson in life is. Very often we go to a funeral and we hear how wonderful the person was who died. And what do we say to ourselves? I wish I would have known that person. It's a shame, right? Because now it's too late.
Yes.
That means the idea is when you see someone or you hear someone that's a wonderful person, get to know them when they're alive. You learn to appreciate them when they're alive. So Miriam, they didn't appreciate her. The minute she dies, whoa, do they realize that Miriam is special. Then the pasuk says, very interesting pasuk. Listen to this pasuk. It says that Vayovu b'nei Yisrael, there was no water, okay? Vayikalu, they gathered. That means there came a mob, a storm, a mob. Al Moshe val Aaron. That means Moshe and Aaron were sitting. The Gemara says they were sitting Shiva. So here, Moshe and Aaron is sitting Shiva, and there's no water, right? So the people, thousands of people come, and we've got to solve this problem.
Yeah, we need the water.
Right. So they're coming to the house or the tent of Moshe and Aaron. Moshe and Aaron are there. Who do they talk to?
Moshe.
Only Moshe. What about Aaron? Next pasuk. Vayorev ha'am, the people fought. Vayorev means they argued. In Moshe. Doesn't say Aaron.
And he's aware.
And he's an Avel. And his brother's sitting right there.
Next
And
week.
no one's talking to Aaron. They're all talking to Moshe. So he brings down over here something very interesting. He brings down from the Baal Brit Avraham, who was one of the students of the Arizal. And he says, why were they so fighting only with Moshe, not with Aaron? And he says, I mean, this is just amazing. He says that Aaron was such a nice person to them. He was always, they didn't want to fight with Aaron.
Peace.
They loved him too much.
Yeah.
So they were angry. They needed water. Moshe and Aaron are sitting there. And they come into the tent, and it says they gathered against Moshe and Aaron. And all of a sudden, they say to Aaron, do me a favor, could you just go to that room and just go down? We want to talk to Moshe alone. And when Aaron leaves, they start screaming at Moshe, what kind of a leader are you? What are you doing? And we need water. But in front of Aaron, they wouldn't do it. So he says, this is a sefer, the Baal Bris Avraham, he says that Aaron was so beloved amongst the people, they didn't want to argue with him. They didn't want to complain to
They
him.
don't want to disrespect him.
They just didn't want to, they loved him too much.
Friendly, I don't
They just loved him too much. I mean, it's just an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. They just loved him too much. Okay? Anyway, so Rabbi Wine says as follows. Rabbi Wine says, let's understand something. Let's understand something. You have 3 million people in the desert. The water supply just disappeared. Do they have a right to be angry?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, they have a right. I mean, we're in the desert.
No.
We have, the water just dried up. So they have a right to be angry. Or they have a right to ask, what are we going to do about water? Moshe gets angry. Moshe says, Shimuna Amorim, you rebellious people. So he says, why are you getting so angry, Moshe? They're not asking for gold. They're not asking for a Lexus. They're asking for water. How can you be angry at a person who says, I'm thirsty? A person comes to you and says, I'm hungry. They're hungry. You can't be angry at a person who's
Buying
hungry.
food, give it to him.
If he wants money to buy cigarettes, you can be angry.
Yeah.
Okay? If he wants money to go to Atlantic City, I hear you. But he doesn't want that. He wants food, and he'll take food. And if you give him food, he'll eat it right there because he's hungry. He can't be angry at a person who's hungry. So he says as follows. He says that Moshe said, I don't get it. For 40 years, Hashem gave you water. What are you so afraid of? You think Hashem just, that's it? 40 years and no more? You have to, the way you're asking tells me that you want water, but you don't want Hashem to give it to you. So he says, why? This is what Moshe's thinking. Why don't you want Hashem to give you the water? Very simple. If you need water, and I'm the one you come to for water, and I constantly give you water, what do I expect from you?
Water.
You want water from me, what do I want from you?
Respect.
Respect, loyalty.
Yeah.
So Moshe says, you know what you want? You want water without Hashem giving it to you.
Yeah.
Because you're tired of having to say thank you every day to Hashem. That's what Moshe got so angry about. He says, the way you're asking, give us water.
Ordering.
Right. What?
Ordering.
And it says to give us means Moshe, you give us. They didn't say, Moshe, do us a favor.
Ask Hashem.
Ask Hashem to give us water.
They're demanding.
Right. They're demanding and they don't want it from Hashem. So they said, why? We're tired. We're tired to have to say thank you to Hashem every day for the food, for the water. We want our own water, we want our own food, we don't want anything to do with Hashem. That's what got Moshe so angry. That means they could have come to Moshe, we're thirsty. Moshe would have said, I'm also thirsty.
Who gives that pirush?
So he brings the, Rabbi Wine says this, Rabbi Wine says this.
I heard a different pirush.
And he brings it down from the Rambam.
Oh, Ramban.
Rambam.
Rambam.
Maimonides.
You know that Bukhari
No, usually Ramban gives the...
yeah, I know. He says
but
that he brings this down from the Rambam.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I heard that usually Moshe Rabbeinu, before he hit the rock, he make a Divrei Torah.
Right.
But people said, we don't want to hear Divrei Torah, give us water.
Which means what? They don't want Divrei Torah because if it comes from the Divrei Torah, it means where water came from
Hashem.
Hashem. If Hashem gives us the water, we have to say thank you again.
Yeah.
We don't want it. We were tired of having to be loyal to Hashem.
So
we want our independence.
We see those rebellion people in nowadays that don't want to hear Divrei Torah when you go like on
Public.
occasions.
With all due respect, this week is a week of total rebellion. The Supreme Court basically said America has nothing to do with religion. Right? Nothing to do with religion.
Yesterday, yeah.
You can marry whoever you want to marry.
Gay marriage, all this.
And the problem is, so it's all about equality. So if tomorrow a brother and a sister want to get married,
No problem.
it should be allowed. They have rights.
Yeah.
That's why today in Russian radio they said soon they're gonna say married to the animal, married to
They
the
have rights.
sister, married to the mother.
Yeah, they
will
have
say,
rights.
Okay,
Right.
like Sodom and Gomorrah.
Angry.
Sodom
Hashem
and
is
Gomorrah.
livid.
Точно сам получается.
You know, it's a problem. That's
Sodom
right.
and Gomorrah.
It's Sodom and Gomorrah. Hakol mutalach. Everything is mutter. You can do whatever
Mix
you
it
want.
up.
Why? Equality. For the name and for the sake of equality.
Потом немножко пожаришь.
You see, and so the Rambam is of the opinion, that in the desert, Moshe Rabbeinu saw the people asking this, and he was so angry. But it doesn't make sense. Why are you angry that they want water? That's normal. A person wants water. But they didn't say to Moshe, ask Hashem to give us water. They said, Moshe, you give us water. We don't want anything from Hashem anymore. We don't want to have to say thank you. That got Moshe angry. That's why Moshe got
There
so
was the Erev Rav, I think.
What?
The people was Erev Rav, what part of the Erev Rav.
Well, they were from...
Their behavior very bad.
For sure. Now, very interesting. He brings out a famous story. A famous story is a guy is on a boat, and the boat is in a terrible storm, and the boat crashes on an island, a deserted island. So the boat is destroyed. So he's marooned. He's stuck on this island. So he slowly gets some wood together, leaves, branches. He makes a little house for himself, a little hut. And he's going collecting berries, everything, and he's trying to keep out of the sun and keep out of the rain. He's deserted. He has no phone. It was before there were cell phones. There's no phone. He's stuck there. He could be there his whole life. As it is, so he goes into the woods to get some berries and maybe something to eat. And he sees it's because it's a hot day. The sun hits this little hut, and it bursts into flames. So now the whole hut that he just spent hours building is burnt to the ground, and everything he had inside is burnt to the ground. Whatever he saved from the boat, burnt to the ground. So he goes like this, he says, why? Why do you hate me so much, Hashem? God, why do you hate me? You crashed my boat, you put me on a deserted island. I start finding a way to cope and survive. I build a little hut for myself to live in. Now you take that away. Why do you hate me? And he just sits down and he closes his eyes and he goes to sleep. All of a sudden he's woken up by a helicopter. There's this big helicopter flying overhead. And the helicopter lands and the guy says, how did you find me? He says, what are you talking about? I saw your smoke signals. When the house burned, I saw the smoke. So I knew there was someone here.
See, I should make it for this.
So he says, we live in a world where things happen, but we don't know why they happen. Parshas Chukas, those Chukat Torah, Para Aduma, we don't understand it. So one person might say, I'm not doing it, I don't understand it. But there are a lot of things in the world that we don't understand. But we do it anyway because the Torah says so. He says in life, there are things that happen. We don't understand why. But we don't run the world. If we could only understand why, we'd understand why things happen, we would be God, we're not God. He says a person who believes, really believes in Hashem, is someone who trusts that whatever happens is for the best. We have to have that emunah, that faith. One last thing, because it's already 9:30, I have to go. Listen to this. He says there was this non-Jew, the Gemara brings this down, there was this non-Jew who had a para aduma, was born to him a para aduma. So the rabbis came, and this is a medrash, and the rabbis offered him 400 gold coins for the para aduma. Wow, 400. He says, no problem. He says, I just want to speak it over my father. I'll come back tomorrow and we'll make the deal. Okay, the rabbis go home. So this guy goes to the bar and he's meeting with some of his goyim friends, and he says, you can't believe how stupid these rabbis are. They're paying me 400 gold coins for this red cow. What's so holy about a red cow? So they're schmoozing and they're talking, and then he says, and you know what the rabbi told me? We need a cow that never had one of these yokes, an owl, a yoke on it. He says, you know what I'm going to do? Tonight, when I go home, I'm just going to take a yoke, and I'm going to put it on the cow for 2 seconds, and then I'm going to take it off. Tomorrow, I'm going to sell this cow for 400 gold coins, and the rabbis won't know the difference. I'm going to fool these rabbis. The next day, the rabbis come, and they say, can we check the cow? And they check the cow, they look it over, and say, sorry, deal's off. So they say, why? He says, because this cow had a yoke on it. He says, how do you know? So the Gemara brings down 2 reasons. Number one, he says there's 2 hairs, and if you put the yoke on, it bends the hairs, and they never bend back up again. So they saw that. And the second is that when you put the yoke on a cow, his head is down, so his eyes look up. What's this on my head? And once he starts looking up, every time you see the cow, he keeps looking up. That means when he never had a yoke, the cow looks straight. But when you put something on, when you see the cow, now he looks up like this all the time. So the cow is looking up all the time. So the Ornet from Or Sameach, he says, just think about it for a moment. For a few minutes of joke, to try to trick, the guy lost a fortune, 400 gold coins. Let's say that's $500,000. Let's say it's $1 million, $10 million. So imagine, what person has a deal worth $10 million,
Jokes on.
but blows it just for a moment's laugh? He says that's what the Torah is all about. The Torah is about to teach you midos, how to behave, how to conduct yourself, how to act. He says there's nothing worse than a person who has bad midos. You talk about, when you look at a proper shidduch and things like that, yes, Shabbos is important, Yom Tov is important, Kashrus is important, but what's important? Midos. How you act, the type of person you are, how you talk, how you treat people. There's nothing worse than someone who has bad midos. Because a person with bad midos can blow a $10 million deal. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.